The market square stinks. Not just the usual medieval stench of horse manure and unwashed bodies, but something sharper today. Fear, maybe. Desperation. You're standing near a vegetable cart, trying to look inconspicuous, when you feel eyes on you. Not the casual glance of a passerby, but the assessing stare of someone who sees value in what others overlook. Your hand trembles slightly as you reach for a bruised apple. The tremor's been there since birth. A nervous twitch that makes fine motor control nearly impossible. Your parents used to say it was God's mark, though they never clarified whether that was blessing or curse. The nobleman approaching you seems to have decided. He's dressed in deep burgundy velvet, gold thread catching the pale morning light. His boots are cleaner than any surface you've touched in weeks. When he speaks, his voice carries the particular confidence of someone who's never been told no. You there, the one with the shaking hands. You don't run. Running implies you have somewhere better to be. Instead, you turn, apple still clutched in your unreliable grip, and meet his gaze. He's smiling, but it's the smile of a man who's just found a tool he didn't know he needed. Can you make people laugh? The question hangs in the air like smoke. You want to say no. You want to tell him you're just trying to buy breakfast, that you're no one special, that there's been a mistake, but your stomach's been empty for 2 days, and his smile promises something worse than starvation if you refuse. Sometimes you manage. Your voice sounds small, good enough. He tosses a coin to the apple seller without looking, grabs your arm with fingers that feel like iron, and begins walking. You stumble after him, apple forgotten, life as you knew it evaporating with each step away from the market. This is how it begins for most, not with auditions or applications, but with being noticed for all the wrong reasons. Maybe it's a physical difference, a club foot or crooked spine. Maybe it's a sharp tongue that got you in trouble one too many times. Maybe you're just desperately poor, and someone offers you 3 meals a day in exchange for your dignity. The reasons vary, the outcome doesn't. You're going to become a jester, and you're going to wish you'd run. The nobleman, you learn, is called Lord Ashford. He serves at the court of a minor earl, whose name you'll spend the next 3 days trying to remember and pronounce. The journey to the estate takes most of the afternoon, your legs aching from trying to match his horse's pace. He doesn't offer you a ride. Jesters walk. When you finally arrive, the castle isn't what you expected. No soaring towers or gleaming white stone. This is a practical fortress, grey and squat, built to withstand sieges rather than impress visitors. The courtyard smells like wet stone and horses. Chickens scatter as you pass. This isn't Camelot. This is just another place where powerful people need entertaining. Lord Ashford hands you off to a man named Godfrey, the steward, whose expression suggests he's deeply unimpressed with the Lord's latest acquisition. Godfrey looks you up and down, notes the trembling hands, the threadbare clothes, the way you can't quite make eye contact, and sighs like a man who's seen this play out too many times. Another one, he mutters. Right, follow me. You're led through a series of increasingly dim corridors until you reach a small room that smells of mildew and old straw. There are 2 other people here, a boy, maybe 14, with a twisted spine that makes him walk sideways, and a woman, older, with a face marked by burns that have healed into pale, rigid scars. They both look up as you enter. Neither smiles. Your quarters, Godfrey announces. You'll share. The Earl expects a performance tomorrow evening. Prepare accordingly. He leaves before you can ask what that means. The woman speaks first. Her voice is surprisingly gentle. What's your talent? I don't have one. Then you better find one fast. She gestures to a pile of clothing in the corner. The costume's over there. Put it on. Get used to it. You'll be wearing it every day for the rest of your life. You approach the pile like it might bite. The fabric is rough wool, dyed in clashing colours that hurt to look at. Bright yellows, aggressive reds, jarring greens. There are bells sewn into the seams. The hat, God, the hat. 3 points, each topped with a jingling bell and a tuft of scraggly feathers. It's designed to make you look ridiculous. It succeeds. Why, you ask, holding up the monstrosity. The boy with the twisted spine laughs, sharp and bitter. Because that's the point. You're not a person anymore. You're a fool. And fools don't get to look human. You dress slowly, each piece feeling like a betrayal of whoever you used to be. The woman watches without judgment, while the boy busies himself with a wooden club wrapped in bells. He's practicing juggling, you realize. Over and over, catching and throwing with a precision that speaks of countless hours of repetition. How long have you been here? You ask him. 2 years. And you? The woman considers the question. 6 years, maybe 7, lost count. Can you leave? She smiles sadly. Where would we go? That night, you lie awake on your straw mat, the bells on your costume jingling with every small movement. The woman, whose name is Maud, tells you about the Earl. He's unpredictable, she says. Kind one moment, vicious the next. He likes jokes, but not at his expense. He appreciates cleverness, but despises being outsmarted. He's generous with coin when pleased, and equally generous with his fists when not. The last jester, she says quietly, told a joke about the Earl's weight. Wrong joke, wrong day. They found him in the river 3 days later. You want to ask if she's exaggerating. The look on her face tells you she's not. The boy, Edmund, adds his own advice. Watch the room. If the nobles are laughing, you're safe. If they're silent, you've already failed. And if the Earl stands up during your performance, duck. Duck? He throws things. Sleep doesn't come easy. When it finally does, you dream of markets and apples and choices you can't take back. Morning arrives too soon, announced by bells. Not your costume bells, but the chapel bells calling the castle to prayer. You're not invited. Jesters don't pray with nobles. You eat in the servants' hall, a draughty room where the kitchen staff eyes you with a mixture of pity and contempt. The food is better than anything you've had in weeks. Thick porridge and actual bread, but it sits heavy in your stomach. Godfrey finds you after breakfast. The Earl wants to meet you. Follow me. And for God's sake, try to be amusing. The Earl's chamber is warm, a fire crackling in a hearth large enough to roast a pig. Tapestries cover the walls, depicting hunting scenes and battles. The Earl himself is younger than you expected, maybe 30, with a face that might be handsome, if not for the permanent sneer. He looks up from a letter as you enter. This is the new one. Yes, my lord, Godfrey confirms. The Earl waves dismissively. Let's see what you can do. Make me laugh. Your mind goes blank, completely, utterly blank. You stand there, costume bells jingling from your nervous trembling, mouth opening and closing like a fish. The Earl's expression shifts from curious to bored to dangerous in the span of 3 heartbeats. Nothing. You have nothing. Panic gives you a terrible idea. You drop to your hands and knees and bark like a dog. It's humiliating. It's pathetic. It's the only thing you can think of. The Earl stares. Then, inexplicably, he laughs. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, surprised bark of laughter that echoes off the stone walls. A fool who knows he's a fool, he says, still grinning. I like that. Do it again. You bark again. He laughs harder. You've just learned your first lesson as a jester. Dignity is the first thing you sacrifice. It won't be the last. Over the following days, you begin to understand the machinery of your new life. There's no schedule, no set hours, just the constant state of being available. The Earl might summon you at dawn or midnight. He might want an hour of entertainment or 30 seconds. Your job is to be ready, always, and to read his mood accurately enough to survive. Maud teaches you the basics. Simple juggling with cloth balls, not yet wood or knives. A few stock jokes that are old enough to be safe. The art of the pratfall. How to throw yourself to the ground without actually injuring yourself. Physical comedy, she explains, is your friend. It requires no wit, just a willingness to hurt. Edmund shows you the musical instruments kept in a chest in your shared room. A small drum, a wooden flute, a stringed lyre with 3 broken strings. Learn something, he advises. Anything. The Earl gets bored easily. You need options. You choose the drum. It's simple. Even with shaking hands, you can manage a basic rhythm. You practice at night, quietly, the soft thuds mixing with the snores of your roommates. Each beat feels like hammering another nail into the coffin of who you used to be. The days blur together, each one a repetition of the last with small variations in humiliation. You're not allowed to eat with the nobles, but you're expected to perform during their meals, dodging thrown food and trying to make scripted comedy seem spontaneous. You're not permitted in the chapel, but you're required to mock the visiting priest with just enough irreverence to amuse without committing blasphemy. You learn the invisible rules. Don't touch the nobles unless specifically invited. Don't speak to the ladies of the court unless performing. Don't sit in the Earl's presence. Don't eat before he does. Don't laugh at your own jokes. Don't cry, ever, no matter how much something hurts. One evening, during a feast, the Earl is in a particularly good mood. He's drunk, which could go either way. You're performing your dog routine, which has inexplicably become his favourite, when he suddenly stands and throws a leg of mutton at your head. You duck, barely, and it crashes into the wall behind you, leaving a greasy smear. The hall goes silent. Then the Earl roars with laughter and everyone joins in, the sound washing over you like a wave. You realize he wasn't angry. He was testing your reflexes. This is entertainment for him. You retrieve the mutton, hold it up, and take a large, exaggerated bite. More laughter. You've passed another test. Edmund was right. Always be watching. Always be ready. That night, lying in the dark, you count your bruises. 7. From various impacts and falls. Your ribs ache. Your jaw is sore from forced smiling. You've been here less than 2 weeks, and you already understand what Maud meant. Where would you go? You become something that doesn't exist outside these walls. The costume helps. Or maybe it doesn't. Every morning you put on the motley, the ridiculous colours and jangling bells, and you feel yourself disappearing a little more. The bright fabric is intentional, Maud explained. It marks you as separate, other, not quite human. When nobles see you coming, they see the costume first, the person never. The 3-pointed hat is the worst. Each point represents something, though the symbolism has been lost to time, and nobody remembers what. What matters is that it's impossible to forget you're wearing it. The bells chime with every movement, announcing your presence, making stealth impossible. You are always visible, always audible, always performing. Some jesters, Edmund tells you, get to wear normal clothes. The intelligent ones, the valued ones, the court favourites who've earned enough respect to be seen as advisors rather than amusing animals. You're not there yet. You might never be. The shaving happens on your 3rd week. Godfrey appears at dawn with a razor and a bowl of soapy water. Orders, he says simply. You sit still while he removes your hair, the blade scraping against your scalp. It's an identifier, another way to mark you as different. Natural fools got shaved heads. Licensed fools kept their hair. The distinction matters to the court, apparently. To you, it just feels like one more indignity. The cold is worse now. Your head loses heat quickly, and the stone corridors of the castle are always freezing. You try wearing a cap underneath the fool's hat, but the Earl notices and makes you remove it. The look is important, he says, as if aesthetic concerns outweigh your comfort. You catch your reflection one day in a polished metal shield hanging in the armory. You don't recognize yourself. The costume, the bare head, the permanent anxious expression. You've been transformed into exactly what they wanted. A fool, a thing to laugh at, a creature whose suffering is entertaining. The worst part isn't the outfit or the cold or the bells. It's the way people look at you now, or rather, how they don't. Nobles glance past you like your furniture. Servants avoid eye contact, as if your condition might be contagious. Children point and giggle. You've become invisible and hypervisible at the same time, seen but not acknowledged as fully human. Only the other jesters treat you normally, and even that's complicated by competition. There are 3 of you now, serving 1 earl. That's too many. Everyone knows it. Edmund's juggling is better than yours. Maud's storytelling is legendary. What do you bring to the table besides the ability to bark and beat a drum? You need something unique, something only you can do. So you start studying the Earl. His patterns, his preferences, his triggers. You notice he laughs hardest at jokes that punch down, at humour that mocks the weak or unfortunate. You notice he values cleverness, but only when he feels included in the joke. You notice his mood shifts based on letters from court, on the phases of the moon, on whether his wife has smiled at him that morning. You become a student of one man's psychology because your life depends on it. And slowly, carefully, you begin to understand how to survive. The Earl summons you alone one morning, which has never happened before. Your stomach drops. Private audiences rarely mean good things for jesters. You enter his chamber expecting the worst. He's sitting at his desk, quill in hand, and gestures for you to close the door. I have a task for you. Not a performance, a task. You wait. My brother visits next week. He's a pompous ass who thinks himself cleverer than everyone. I want you to mock him, subtly. Make him look foolish without making it obvious you're doing it on purpose. This is a test, a dangerous one. Mock a noble too gently and you fail to amuse. Mock them too harshly and you've made an enemy. And this isn't just any noble. This is the Earl's brother. I'll do my best, my lord. See that you do. He returns to his letter. You're dismissed. You spend the next week in a state of controlled panic, crafting material with Maud's help. She's done this before, she says. The key is to use stories and metaphors, to tell tales about hypothetical people that happen to perfectly describe the target. That way, if accused, you can claim innocence. You weren't mocking Lord Robert. You were just telling a story about a fictional pompous ass. Lord Robert arrives with an entourage of 15 people, all dressed in finery that makes the Earl's court look provincial. He's tall, handsome, in the way that suggests he's never known hardship, and he speaks in a booming voice designed to command attention. That night's feast is tense. The brothers sit side by side, trading barbs disguised as pleasantries. You're called to perform halfway through the meal. You tell a story about a peacock who believed himself to be a phoenix. The peacock strutted and preened, convinced that his beautiful tail feathers meant he could rise from ashes. But when real fire came, he learned that beauty and power are not the same thing. The peacock burned, while the chickens, who never claimed to be special, survived to lay eggs another day. The hall is silent when you finish. Lord Robert's face has gone red. You've just called him a delusional peacock while his servants are the practical chickens. Then the Earl laughs, loud and long, and because he laughs, everyone else does too. Even Lord Robert, though his eyes promise violence. You've succeeded. You've also made an enemy. That night, one of Lord Robert's men corners you in a hallway. He doesn't say anything, just grabs your head and slams it into the stone wall once, hard enough to make lights dance behind your eyes. When he releases you, you collapse to the floor, tasting blood. "Careful with your stories, fool," he says, and walks away. You lie there for a while, checking your teeth with your tongue, all present. Your head throbs with a pain that promises to last for days, but you kept your teeth and you pleased the Earl. In the brutal arithmetic of Jester life, that's a win. Maud finds you eventually and helps you back to your room. She cleans the cut on your scalp without comment. She's seen this before. She'll see it again. Was it worth it? You ask, mostly to yourself. Does it matter? The answer, you're learning, is always no. Days become weeks, become months. You settle into a rhythm, if such a word can describe chaos. Every morning is different, but the underlying structure never changes. You wake before dawn. You put on the costume. You wait to be summoned. You perform. You endure. You survive. The performances themselves become almost routine, though they never stop being terrifying. The Earl wants magic tricks, so you learn sleight of hand from a travelling performer who stops at the castle. The Earl wants songs, so you memorize ballads until your throat is raw. The Earl wants acrobatics, so you practice flips until you can land them without breaking bones most of the time. Your body accumulates injuries like a wall accumulates cracks. A twisted ankle that never quite heals right. Bruised ribs from a fall. Scars from cuts that got infected. None of it is treated. There's no physician for jesters. You either recover or you don't. The mental toll is harder to quantify. You catch yourself rehearsing jokes in your sleep, your brain unable to shut off even in dreams. You develop a nervous habit of laughing at inappropriate times, your face stuck in performance mode. You forget what it felt like to be genuinely happy, as opposed to performance happy. Edmund disappears one night. No goodbye, no explanation. Godfrey announces the next morning that he's been dismissed. "Found him crying," the steward says with disgust. "Can't have that. The Earl doesn't pay jesters to be sad. You don't ask where Edmund went. You don't want to know." A new jester arrives to replace him. A woman named Alice, who can walk on her hands and juggle with her feet. She's younger than you, maybe 17, and she still has hope in her eyes. You remember having that. It seems like a different lifetime. Alice learns quickly what you learn slowly. The Earl's preferences, the unspoken rules, the fine line between amusing and insulting. She's good at the physical comedy, better than Edmund ever was. You feel the cold wind of replacement at your back, so you adapt. You focus on your niche, storytelling and political satire disguised as innocent tales. You become the jester who can make complicated ideas simple and simple ideas complicated. You earn your place through words rather than flips, but you're always aware of how tenuous your position is. One bad performance, one joke that lands wrong, One day when the Earl wakes up in a foul mood and decides he's tired of your face. That's all it would take. The fear is constant, a low-level hum of anxiety that never fully goes away. Even on good days, when the Earl is generous and the court is laughing, you're aware that it could all end in an instant. Your continued existence depends entirely on the whims of people who view you as disposable entertainment. And maybe that's the worst part. Not the physical pain or the humiliation or the exhaustion. It's knowing that your life has no inherent value. You matter only as much as you're able to amuse. The moment you stop being funny, you stop being anything at all. One afternoon, Godfrey pulls you aside. The Earl has a message he needs delivered. Your blood turns to ice. Message delivery. This is the job nobody wants. Where? The border village of Thornfield. 3 days' ride. You'll carry a sealed letter to the village headman. Alone? Alone. This is both punishment and test. Jesters are sometimes used as messengers because they're mobile, expendable, and nobody takes them seriously enough to interrogate properly. But it's dangerous work. Roads are full of bandits. Messages often contain bad news, and if the recipient doesn't like what they read, jesters are convenient targets for their anger. You leave the next morning with nothing but the letter, 3 days' worth of stale bread, and your fool's costume. The bright colours make you a target, but removing them would be insubordination. You're required to look ridiculous even in danger. The journey is long and lonely. You're not accustomed to riding, and the horse, sensing your incompetence, does its best to make you miserable. Your inner thighs develop blisters that burst and sting. Your back aches from the unfamiliar posture. The bells on your costume jingle with every step, announcing your presence to anyone within hearing distance. On the second day, you're stopped by 3 men who appear from the tree line like wolves materializing from shadows. They're dressed in mismatched armor, clearly brigands or displaced soldiers. One carries a sword that's seen heavy use. They're not laughing. What's this then? The leader, a man with a scar bisecting his nose, approaches. A fool. On the road. Strange times. You try to make your voice steady. Just a messenger, sirs, carrying a letter for the Earl. A letter. He grins, showing missing teeth. Could be valuable. Could be worth something. It's just boring court business. Trade agreements. Boring stuff. Then you won't mind if we take a look. They search you roughly, finding the letter. The leader breaks the seal and squints at the writing. He can't read. None of them can. After a moment he crumples it and tosses it aside. Nothing valuable, but that horse. He eyes your mount with clear intent. You make a decision. You drop to your hands and knees and bark, loud and genuine, channeling every ounce of absurdity you've learned. Then you chase your own tail in a circle, bells jangling, before collapsing and playing dead. The brigands stare. Then, one by one, they start laughing. The leader shakes his head in disbelief. You're mad. Completely mad. Go on, get out of here before I change my mind. You scramble back onto the horse, retrieve the crumpled letter, and ride away without looking back. Your hands are shaking so badly you can barely hold the reins. You've just survived through sheer stupidity, by being so pathetic that even brigands couldn't bring themselves to kill you. When you finally reach Thornfield, the headman reads the letter, and his face goes white. It's eviction notices for 3 families who couldn't pay their taxes. He looks at you with such hatred that you instinctively step back. You brought this? I'm just the messenger, sir. You're a fool. Both meanings apply. You know this. He knows this. The families being evicted will know this when they're thrown out of their homes in winter. The headman doesn't hit you, but his silence is somehow worse. You ride back to the castle with the knowledge that you've contributed to suffering, that your actions have consequences beyond just making people laugh or fail to laugh. When you return and deliver the headman's written response, the Earl doesn't ask about your journey. He doesn't care that you were nearly robbed or that you delivered devastating news or that you haven't slept properly in 5 days. He just nods and dismisses you. You've successfully delivered a message. You're alive. That's the entirety of your reward. That night, you can't sleep. The faces of the brigands, the hatred in the headman's eyes, the knowledge of families being displaced. It churns in your mind like spoiled meat in your gut. Maud notices your distress but says nothing. What would she say? This is the job. This is what you signed up for, or rather, what was signed up for you. You realize that being a jester isn't just about performance. It's about being a tool, an instrument of power and cruelty, wrapped in bells and bright colors so nobody notices the blade. The weeks following the message delivery pass in a haze. You're stuck in your own head more than usual, going through the motions of performances without really being present. The Earl notices, commenting that you seem off, but he doesn't care enough to investigate. As long as you make him laugh, your internal state is irrelevant. Winter arrives, and with it, the cold that seeps into every corner of the castle. Your shared room has no fireplace, just a small brazier that barely takes the edge off the freezing air. You sleep in your costume because it's warmer than your underclothes. Your bare scalp loses heat so quickly that you wake with headaches that last all morning. The physical discomfort is matched by a growing sense of unreality. You've been here long enough now that your previous life has started to feel like a dream. Did you really once live in a small cottage? Did you have friends, a family, a name that wasn't synonymous with Foole? The memories are there, but they're fading, like writing slowly erased by rain. Alice, the new jester, adapts faster than you did. Within months, she's perfected her routine and earned the Earl's favour. She's young enough to still have energy for elaborate acrobatics, and pretty enough that the nobles enjoy watching her, even when she fails. You're neither young nor pretty, which means your margin for error shrinks daily. One evening, the Earl hosts a grand feast for a visiting duke. The main hall is packed with nobles from across the region, all dressed in their finest. You're expected to perform your best material. No pressure. You start with a story about two merchants arguing over which one is wealthier. It's a safe choice, a tale with an obvious moral that doesn't offend anyone. The room politely chuckles. Not great, but not bad. Then Alice does a backflip while juggling flaming torches. The room erupts in applause. You're losing. You can feel it. The attention shifting, the Earl's interest waning. You need something bigger, riskier. Against your better judgment, you launch into a political satire about corrupt tax collectors. It's funny, sharp, well-crafted. It's also dangerous, because several of the nobles in the room are tax collectors. The laughter that follows is nervous, uncertain. The Earl's face is unreadable. You've crossed a line, maybe. Or maybe you haven't. The ambiguity is suffocating. Later, after the feast, the Earl summons you. Your heart sinks. That joke about tax collectors, he says slowly. Yes, my lord. Duke Thornbury didn't appreciate it. He collects taxes for the crown. I apologize, my lord. I didn't mean... Shut up. He stands towering over you. For a moment, you're certain he's going to strike you. Instead, he laughs. It was hilarious. Duke Thornbury is a pompous ass. I enjoyed watching him squirm. Relief floods through you so intensely you nearly collapse. But, the Earl continues, next time, warn me first. I like to be prepared when you're going to humiliate my guests. Yes, my lord. Of course. You've dodged execution by pure chance. The Earl happened to dislike the target of your joke. If he'd liked Duke Thornbury, you'd be facing punishment right now. This is what Jester's privilege looks like. The illusion of freedom to speak, bounded by invisible lines that shift without warning. You're learning to live in that uncertainty, to make peace with never knowing if today is the day you finally push too far. As winter deepens, you fall ill. Not seriously, just a persistent cough and fever that makes your bones ache. There's no time off for illness. The Earl still expects performances, so you perform while shivering, while feeling like your head is stuffed with wool, while fighting the urge to collapse. Maud makes you tea from herbs she grows in pots on the windowsill. It helps a little, but mostly you just endure. Rest is a luxury you can't afford. During one particularly bad night, you wake up coughing so hard you taste blood. Alice stirs in her sleep, but doesn't wake. Maud does, though. She sits up and watches you in the dim light. You should leave, she says quietly. What? While you're young enough to still have options, before this place completely breaks you. Where would I go? I don't know. Anywhere. Be a travelling performer. Beg on streets. Anything is better than this. You want to believe her, but you can't. The costume has become your skin. The role has consumed whoever you used to be. And more importantly, you're terrified of what life would look like outside these walls. At least here, you have food and shelter. Out there, you'd have nothing but the clothes on your back and a reputation as a fool. I can't, you admit. Maud nods like she expected that answer. Then you'd better toughen up, because it gets worse before it gets worse. She rolls over and goes back to sleep. You lie awake, coughing occasionally, wondering if there's any truth to the idea that it gets better. You're starting to suspect there isn't. By spring, you've been at the castle for over a year. You've survived longer than Edmund, which feels like an accomplishment even though it shouldn't. You've learned to anticipate the Earl's moods, to read the room, to know when to push and when to retreat. You've become competent at your job, which is a strange thing to feel proud of. But competence doesn't equal safety. The Earl's favour is a fickle thing, easily given and easily revoked. You've seen other servants dismissed for minor infractions. You've watched as a kitchen maid was whipped for burning bread. You know that jesters are no exception to the castle's casual cruelty. One morning, you wake to find Maud gone. Not dismissed, not dead, just gone. Her few possessions are missing. She left in the night without saying goodbye. Alice looks as confused as you feel. Where did she go? You have no idea, but you hope desperately that wherever she is, it's better than here. Maybe she took her own advice. Maybe she found a way out while she still could. Or maybe she's dead in a ditch somewhere. And you'll never know. With Maud gone, you're the senior jester now. It's not a promotion. There's no pay increase, no additional respect. But Alice looks to you for guidance the way you once looked to Maud, and that terrifies you. You're barely holding yourself together. How are you supposed to help someone else? You try anyway. You teach her the things Maud taught you. How to read the room. How to make criticisms sound like jest. How to fall without hurting yourself. How to eat just enough to stay functional, but not so much that you get sluggish. Small mercies and survival skills. She listens attentively, and you see in her eyes the same fear you felt when you started. She's realized what you realized. There's no way out. Not really. The costume is a cage that goes with you everywhere. The Earl announces he's hosting a tournament. This means weeks of extra work as the castle prepares for an influx of nobles and knights. It also means you'll be expected to perform constantly, entertaining guests from dawn until well past dark. The tournament itself is brutal and boring in equal measure. Armoured men hitting each other with lances while crowds cheer. You're required to provide commentary between jousts, filling the silence with jokes and observations that nobody really listens to. They're here for the violence, not the jester. During one particularly dull match, you notice a knight in the stands watching you instead of the field. He's youngish, maybe 25, with the kind of clean-shaven face that suggests he's never been in real combat. When your eyes meet, he smiles. After your performance, he approaches. You're quite talented. Thank you, my lord. I'm looking for entertainment for my own household. Would you be interested in a position? For one wild moment, you consider saying yes. A new master, a fresh start, maybe better treatment. Then reality reasserts itself. You're the Earl's property. You can't just leave. And even if you could, there's no guarantee the new position would be any better. Different cruelties, same cage. I'm honoured, my lord, but I serve the Earl. He nods, disappointed but not surprised. A pity. Well, if you ever change your mind. He hands you a small coin, a tip, more money than you've seen in months. You pocket it carefully, aware that Godfrey will demand a portion for administrative purposes. But even half a coin is wealth to you. That night, you lie awake thinking about the offer, not seriously considering it, but imagining what might have been. A different castle, different nobles, different rules. Would it be better? Would it be worse? Does it even matter when the fundamental situation remains the same? Your property. The illusion of choice is just that, an illusion. The tournament concludes with a grand feast, where you're expected to perform your final routine. You've prepared something elaborate, a story with characters and voices, comedy and pathos. You've spent weeks perfecting it. 5 minutes before you're called to perform, the Earl summons you to his chamber. He's drunk, you can tell immediately, and in a foul mood. One of his knights lost in the final joust, embarrassing him in front of his guests. I need you to do something, he says, words slightly slurred. That pompous knight from Derbyshire, the one who won the tournament. Mock him, destroy him, make him look like a fool. My lord, I have a prepared routine. I don't care. Change it. Mock him. That's an order. You have minutes to completely restructure your performance, to find weaknesses in a man you've barely observed, to create mockery that's savage enough to satisfy the Earl, but subtle enough to avoid crossing into obvious insult. You do your best. You tell a story about a knight who is so concerned with his appearance that he polishes his armour until it blinds him, and thus he wins tournaments by accident, his opponents unable to see through the glare. It's clever, it's cutting, it's not enough. The Earl's face remains stony throughout your performance. When you finish, the silence is deafening. You failed. That night, you're summoned again. The Earl is even drunker now, and his mood has curdled into something vicious. He doesn't say anything, just nods to Godfrey. The steward grabs your arm and hauls you to the courtyard. It's empty, dark, cold. You know what's coming before you see the post. They strip off your costume and tie you to the whipping post. The leather bites into your wrists. You hear the whistle of the whip before you feel it. A sharp crack followed by a line of fire across your back. 1 lash, 2, 3. You lose count somewhere around 7. The world narrows to pain and the taste of blood, where you've bitten your tongue. When they finally cut you down, you collapse onto the cold stones. Someone throws your costume at you. You're expected to put it back on, to return to your room, to be ready to perform tomorrow as if nothing happened. Alice helps you back. She doesn't speak, just supports your weight as you stumble through corridors that seem to stretch forever. In your room, she helps you clean the wounds as best she can with water and scraps of cloth. "I'm sorry," she whispers. "Not your fault." Will you be okay? You want to say yes. You want to be reassuring. Instead, you tell her the truth. Probably not. But the next morning, you put on the costume. You paint on the smile. You perform for the departing guests. Because that's what jesters do. They endure. The scars from the whipping heal slowly, leaving pale lines across your back that pull and ache when you move. They're a reminder, as if you needed one, of how precarious your position is. One failed performance, one bad mood, one moment of displeasure, and you're back at the post. You become more cautious in your material, pulling back from the edge of satire. Better to be safe and forgettable than sharp and punished. Alice notices the change, but doesn't comment. She's learning her own lessons about survival. Spring turns to summer. The castle is hot now, the stone walls radiating stored heat like an oven. Your costume is unbearable in the warmth, the wool scratching and trapping sweat. You're not allowed to modify it. The Earl wants authenticity, whatever that means. You develop a rash under your arms from the constant moisture. It doesn't heal, just gets worse. Occasionally bleeding when you move too vigorously. There's no salve, no treatment. You tear strips from your undershirt to provide some barrier between cloth and raw skin. It helps a little. One evening, during a quiet moment, Alice asks you about Maud. Where do you think she went? I don't know. Away, hopefully. Do you think she made it? You consider lying, offering some comforting fiction about Maud finding happiness in a distant village. But Alice deserves honesty. I think she probably died within a week. No one wants to hire a former jester. We're marked, tainted, and without coin or skills beyond entertainment, survival would be almost impossible. Alice is quiet for a long time. Then, so we're trapped. Yes, forever. Or until we're no longer useful. She doesn't ask what happens then. She doesn't need to. The conversation haunts you both. You see it in the way Alice performs now, a desperate edge to her acrobatics, as if she's trying to prove her value with every flip. You see it in the mirror when you catch glimpses of yourself, the hunted look of an animal that knows its prey. The next crisis comes without warning. The Earl's wife falls ill, not seriously, just a summer cold, but the Earl is beside himself with worry. In his anxiety, he becomes erratic, lashing out at anyone within reach. You're called to perform, to lift his spirits. But how do you make someone laugh when they're terrified of losing someone they love? Every joke falls flat. Every attempt at levity feels inappropriate. After 15 minutes of failed entertainment, the Earl dismisses you with a wave. Get out, you're useless. You retreat, knowing that useless is one step away from expendable. For the next 3 days, while the Earl's wife recovers, you're in a state of constant dread, waiting for Godfrey to announce your dismissal. But the Earl's wife recovers, and the Earl, relieved, forgets his displeasure. You've survived by pure luck, by the whim of a summer cold that resolved itself. This is your life now, surviving from one near disaster to the next, held in place by forces beyond your control, waiting for the moment when your luck finally runs out. One afternoon, you're summoned to the Earl's Solar along with Alice. This is unusual. Joint summons are rare. The Earl is studying a map when you enter. He looks up, expression unreadable. There's to be a battle. Minor dispute with a neighbouring lord over water rights. I'm leading a force to settle it. Your stomach drops. You'll both accompany me. Jesters are good for morale. It's not a request. It's never a request. You're given 2 days to prepare, though there's nothing to prepare. You own nothing but your costume and a few personal items. The idea of going to war is so absurd, so disconnected from any version of reality you understand, that you can barely process it. Alice is even more terrified than you are. I can't go to a battle. I'll die. We'll probably both die. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be. The departure is chaos. 50 men-at-arms, supply wagons, horses, and somewhere in the middle of it all, 2 jesters in bright costumes that make you look like exotic birds in a flock of crows. The Earl rides at the front, armour gleaming. You and Alice walk with the camp followers, the prostitutes and merchants and cooks who trail armies like flies on a corpse. The journey takes 4 days. You walk the entire time, your soft feet developing blisters that burst and reform. At night, you sleep under wagons when it rains, in open fields when it doesn't. The bells on your costume attract attention, most of it unwelcome. Soldiers find it hilarious to trip you, to push you into mud, to make you perform for their amusement at all hours. One night, a drunk soldier grabs Alice and tries to drag her into the darkness. You intervene without thinking, screaming and hitting him with your bauble. He's so surprised that a jester is fighting back that he lets go. Then he punches you in the face, dropping you like a stone. Alice escapes. Your nose breaks with a crunch you feel more than hear. Blood pours down your face, soaking into your costume. The soldier laughs and returns to his fire. No one helps you. No one even comments. This is just what happens to jesters at war. You eventually stop the bleeding with a cloth pressed to your face. Your nose is crooked now, healed wrong. Just another scar, another story you'll never tell. The battle itself is anticlimax wrapped in terror. 2 small armies meet in a field near a river. You and Alice are positioned with the supply wagons, far enough back to be relatively safe, close enough to see the carnage. The Earl wants entertainment before the fighting starts. He wants his men in good spirits. So you perform, you juggle, you tell jokes, you do your dog routine, barking and prancing while men prepare to kill each other. The disconnect between your actions and the situation is so profound it feels like madness. You're making people laugh while they check the sharpness of their swords. You're doing pratfalls while men write final letters to their families. Then the horn sounds. The 2 forces collide with a sound like thunder, metal on metal, screams and war cries mixing into a cacophony that makes your teeth ache. You watch men die. It's not clean or heroic. It's ugly and wet and terrifying. You see a man take an axe to the skull and drop instantly. You see another clutching at intestines that are spilling from a stomach wound, screaming for his mother. You see a horse go down, thrashing, crushing its rider underneath. The whole thing lasts maybe 15 minutes. The Earl's forces win, barely. Afterward, there's more screaming as the wounded are tended to, or not tended to, depending on their importance. You're expected to entertain again that night, during the victory celebration. You can still smell blood in the air. You can hear the wounded crying in the medical tent. But you perform because that's your job. You tell a story about a brave knight who defeats a dragon. The men cheer. You feel like you're going to vomit. One of the Earl's advisors approaches you afterward. Good work. You kept the men's spirits up. You don't respond. What would you say? That you feel complicit in the violence? That entertaining killers makes you a participant in their killing? That you want to run screaming into the night? Instead, you nod. Thank you, my lord. That night, you can't sleep. Every time you close your eyes, you see the man with the axe in his skull. You see the crushed rider. You see Alice's face when she was grabbed by the soldier. War, you realize, is just another performance venue. Another place where jesters are expected to make light of darkness, to find humor in horror, to pretend that any of this makes sense. The return journey is subdued. Several men died, more were wounded. The Earl is pleased with his victory, but quiet. The water rights dispute has been settled. It cost 8 lives and countless injuries. Everyone agrees it was worth it. You don't agree, but your agreement was never requested. Back at the castle, things return to normal with disturbing speed. The dead are buried or forgotten. The wounded recover or don't. You resume your daily performances as if you didn't just witness combat. But something has changed in you. A hardness, a coldness that wasn't there before. You've seen the worst of what humans can do to each other, and you've been forced to smile through it all. Alice notices. Are you all right? No. Me neither. You sit together in silence. 2 survivors of an experience that no one else will acknowledge as traumatic. Jesters don't get trauma. Jesters make jokes. The Earl summons you a week later with a special request. His nephew is visiting, a boy of 13, and the Earl wants him entertained. You're to spend the day with the child, teaching him about court life, keeping him occupied. The nephew, Thomas, is polite but clearly uncomfortable with the entire arrangement. He doesn't want a jester. He wants to be training with swords or studying with tutors, but his uncle has decreed entertainment, so entertainment he gets. You try everything, juggling, stories, jokes. Thomas watches with the expression of someone enduring dental surgery. Finally, in desperation, you just talk to him normally, dropping the jester persona. You don't have to pretend to be amused, you say. I know this is stupid. Thomas blinks, surprised. You're not supposed to say that. Who's going to tell? You? He considers, then smiles for the first time. What's it like, being a fool? You think about lying, spinning some tale about the glamour and excitement. But Thomas is looking at you with genuine curiosity, and you're tired of performing. It's horrible, you admit. Every day you're afraid of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, being in the wrong place. You're never safe. You're never respected. You're a thing people use for amusement and discard when they're bored. Thomas is quiet for a long moment. Why don't you leave? Where would I go? What would I do? This is all I am now. The boy looks thoughtful. Then, that's very sad. Yes, it is. You spend the rest of the day teaching Thomas card tricks. He's good at them, better than you ever were. He's smart, kind, everything the Earl isn't. You find yourself hoping that Thomas never becomes like his uncle, that somehow he retains his humanity despite his privilege. When the Earl asks later how the day went, you report that Thomas was well entertained. The Earl is pleased. Thomas doesn't contradict you, though he could. That small mercy, that moment of genuine connection, is the most human interaction you've had in months. It sustains you for a while, that memory of being seen as a person rather than a performer. But like all good things in your life, it fades, replaced by the grinding monotony of daily survival. You're approaching your 2nd year at the castle. The anniversary passes without acknowledgement. Jesters don't get celebrated, but you mark it privately, counting the days you've survived, the performances you've endured, the scars you've accumulated. Alice asks you one evening, "How long can we keep doing this?" You don't have an answer. Maybe forever. Maybe until tomorrow. In a job where your life depends on making people laugh, long-term planning is impossible. All you know is that you're still here, still performing, still wearing the costume that has become your skin. And that has to be enough, because it's all you have. The winter arrives again. You're second at the castle. The cold feels more oppressive this year, settling into your bones like it's found a permanent home. Your costume, thin and bright and useless against the chill, offers no protection. You've learned to move quickly between drafty corridors, to huddle close to any source of warmth, to keep performing even when your fingers are too numb to feel the props you juggle. But this winter brings something new, a sickness that sweeps through the castle like a flood. It starts with the servants, kitchen workers coughing into their sleeves, chambermaids calling in sick. Then it reaches the nobles, and then, inevitably, it reaches you. It's not the plague, thank God, but it's bad enough. Fever, cough, body aches that make even simple movements agony. You try to hide it, knowing that sick jesters are useless jesters. You perform through chattering teeth, through sweat that soaks your costume, through a dizziness that makes the room tilt. The Earl notices, of course. You look terrible. Thank you, my lord. I've been practicing. The joke falls flat. He waves you away, disgusted. Get out of my sight until you're better. It's the closest thing to mercy you've received. You stumble back to your room and collapse onto your straw mat, shivering uncontrollably. Alice is already sick, curled into a ball and moaning softly. There's no fire in the brazier, no one to tend to you. You're on your own. For 3 days, you drift in and out of fever dreams. You dream about your old life, about markets and apples, about choices you could have made differently. You dream about Maud, wondering if she's warm wherever she is. You dream about dying, sometimes peacefully, sometimes violently, always with relief. On the 4th day, the fever breaks. You wake weak and shaky, but alive. Alice is also recovering, slowly. You help each other sip water, share the heel of bread someone left outside your door. You're both too weak to perform, but you're alive. That's something. The Earl is less pleased. When you're finally strong enough to return to your duties, he makes his displeasure clear. 2 weeks. You've been useless for 2 weeks. I should dock your pay. What pay, you want to ask. But you hold your tongue. I apologize, my lord. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't. You return to performing, still weak, still coughing occasionally. The room spins sometimes when you do acrobatics. You learn to work through it, to hide the tremors and the exhaustion. The audience doesn't care if you're healthy. They just want entertainment. The sickness changes something in Alice. She's more reckless now, pushing herself harder than necessary. She performs dangerous stunts without proper preparation, flips with insufficient clearance, juggles with fire despite having poor depth perception from her recent fever. You try to warn her, but she won't listen. If I'm going to die here anyway, I might as well go out doing something impressive. It's the logic of despair, and you recognize it because you felt it yourself. The overwhelming sense of futility that makes self-preservation seem pointless. One evening, during a banquet, Alice attempts a backflip off a table. She's done it before, many times. But tonight, still weakened from her illness, she miscalculates. She lands wrong, her ankle twisting with an audible crack. She screams. The room goes silent. Then, because this is the world you live in, someone laughs. And once one person laughs, Others join in. Soon the entire hall is roaring with laughter at Alice writhing on the floor in agony. You rush to help her, trying to pull her to her feet. She can't stand. The ankle is broken, clearly and severely. She needs a physician, setting, splinting. She needs care. The Earl waves dismissively. Get her out of here. She's ruining the mood. You half carry, half drag Alice from the hall. In the corridor, away from the laughter, she sobs. Not from pain, though that must be intense. From humiliation, from the realization of what this injury means. I can't perform, she gasps between sobs. If I can't perform, what happens to me? You don't answer because you don't have to. You both know. Godfrey arranges for Alice to be tended by the castle physician, a rare mercy. But the prognosis is grim. The ankle is badly broken. Even with proper care, she'll never have the mobility she once had. Her acrobatic career is over. The Earl dismisses her a week later. No ceremony, no farewell. Just Godfrey delivering the news with his usual blank efficiency. You're to leave tomorrow morning. Take your things. Alice looks at you with empty eyes. Where do I go? There's a church in the village. They take in people. Sometimes. It's a polite way of saying beggars. Alice will be begging for charity, surviving on scraps, living with the same stigma that made her vulnerable to becoming a jester in the first place. The circle is complete. She leaves before dawn. You don't watch her go. You can't. You're alone now. The senior jester, the only jester. The Earl hasn't hired a replacement. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. For now, you're it. The loneliness is crushing. You'd gotten used to having someone to share the burden with, someone who understood without needing explanation. Now you're back to solitary survival, carrying the entire weight of the Earl's amusement on your own shoulders. You throw yourself into work, developing new routines, perfecting old ones. You learn to play the lute with mediocre competence. You memorize 100 new jokes, most of them terrible. You practice until your body aches and your mind is numb. Because what else is there? One night, alone in your room, you find yourself crying. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears that won't stop. You're not even sure what triggered it. The accumulated weight of everything maybe. The isolation, the fear, the grinding certainty that this is your life until it isn't. Until you're used up and discarded like Alice, like Edmund, like everyone who came before. You cry yourself to sleep, and when you wake, you put on the costume and perform as if nothing happened. Because that's what jesters do. Spring comes again. You're third at the castle. You're a veteran now, one of the longest-serving jesters in recent memory. This should feel like an accomplishment. It just feels like you've been trapped longer than most. The Earl is hosting a wedding. His cousin is marrying some minor noblewoman, and the castle is preparing for a week of festivities. This means constant performances, endless hours of being on, no rest, no privacy, just work. You're expected to be everywhere, entertaining guests during meals, performing during the ceremony itself, keeping children occupied, making adults laugh. You're running on pure adrenaline and willpower by the third day, barely sleeping, eating only when someone shoves food in your direction. During the wedding feast, you're doing your routine when you notice a woman watching you intently. She's older, maybe 50, dressed in simple but well-made clothes. Not nobility, but not a servant either. When your eyes meet, she nods slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement that feels almost respectful. After your performance, she approaches. You're very talented. Thank you, my lady. I used to be like you, a performer, in a different time, in a different place. You study her face, looking for signs of the costume, the bells, the shame. You don't see them. She's just a woman, ordinary and free. How did you stop? She smiles sadly. I got old. They let me go. I nearly starved, but I found work eventually. Cooking, cleaning, normal work. It was hard, but it was mine. No one laughing at me, no one owning me. Did it get better? Eventually. Not at first, but eventually. She hands you something, a small cloth bundle. Inside is bread, cheese, and a silver coin. For when you're ready, she says, and walks away before you can respond. You pocket the bundle quickly, before anyone notices. It's not much, it wouldn't get you far. But it's the first time anyone has offered you an escape route, however small. That night, you lie awake thinking about leaving. Really leaving. Not just fantasizing, but actually planning it. You'd need to save more coin, wait for the right moment, probably during another tournament or major event when security is lax. But then what? The woman said it was hard. She nearly starved. And she was just a performer, not a jester. You're marked, tainted by association with nobility. People would recognize the costume's influence even if you burned it. You'd be starting from less than nothing. And yet, the possibility exists. Someone escaped and survived. That has to mean something. You don't make any decisions that night. But the seed has been planted. The wedding concludes successfully. The Earl is pleased with how everything went, particularly the entertainment. He even gives you a bonus, 3 silver coins. More wealth than you've ever held at once. You hide the coins carefully, adding them to the woman's gift. You now have 4 silver coins, enough to survive for maybe a month if you're careful. Not enough to guarantee safety, but more than you've ever had. Over the following weeks, you become more conscious of money, of opportunities. You start taking small jobs on the side, telling fortunes for servants, made up nonsense, but they don't know that. Helping write letters for the illiterate in exchange for copper pieces. It's slow, but your stash grows. You also start paying attention to the castle's rhythms, to when guards change shifts, to which gates are least monitored, to how travellers come and go. You're not planning anything specific. You're just preparing, just in case. One afternoon, the Earl summons you with unusual urgency. When you arrive, his face is strained. My mother has died. You feel a moment of genuine sympathy. Death is the great equalizer, affecting nobles and jesters alike. But you know your role. I'm very sorry, my lord. I need you to do something. At the funeral, I need you to not perform, just be there, silent. It's tradition to have a fool present, but obviously laughter would be inappropriate. Of course, my lord. The funeral is 3 days later. You stand in the back of the chapel, wearing your costume but silent and still. You feel the eyes of mourners on you occasionally, wondering why the fool is here, why he's not speaking. You don't explain because you can't. But as you stand there, listening to prayers for the dead, you realize something. The Earl's mother was probably kind to you once or twice. Most nobles ignored jesters entirely, but she would occasionally smile, acknowledge your presence. Small mercies, easily forgotten. And now she's dead. And you're standing in your ridiculous costume at her funeral, because tradition demands a fool bear witness. It's grotesque and poignant in equal measure. After the ceremony, the Earl approaches you privately. Thank you. I know it was strange, but it meant something to me. I'm glad I could help, my lord. He looks at you for a long moment, and for once, he doesn't see a jester. He sees a person. You've been here a long time. You've served me well. Thank you, my lord. I want you to know I appreciate it. It's the closest thing to genuine kindness the Earl has ever shown you. It should make you happy. Instead, it makes you sad, because you realize this is as good as it gets. A moment of acknowledgement from a man who usually treats you like furniture. This is the peak of your career. That night, you count your coins. Again. 7 silver now, plus various copper pieces. Not a fortune, but more than most people have. Enough to maybe, possibly, survive. The decision crystallizes slowly, like ice forming on a pond. You're going to leave. Not today, maybe not next week, but soon. You're going to take your coins and your costume and walk away from the castle that's been your prison for 3 years. It's terrifying. It's stupid. It's the only thing that makes sense. You start preparing in earnest, stashing food, acquiring a traveling cloak through careful trading, memorizing the roads and towns nearby. You tell no one, not even considering it. The walls have ears, and loose lips could get you dragged back in chains. The opportunity comes during a harvest festival. The castle is chaos, nobles and common folk mixing. Gates open for deliveries. Everyone distracted by celebration. You wait until evening when the feast is in full swing, and your absence won't be immediately noticed. You change out of your jester costume for the first time in years. The regular clothes feel strange, too plain, too normal, but they also feel like freedom. You pack your costume in a sack, unable to fully leave it behind. It's evidence of who you were, proof you existed. Then you walk out, not running, not sneaking, just walking through the main gate like you have every right to be there. The guards don't stop you. Why would they? You're just a traveller in simple clothes, leaving after the festival. You make it to the road, then past the first bend, then to the crossroads where you turn south, away from the castle, away from the earl, away from everything you've known for 3 years, and you keep walking. The first night alone is terrifying. You sleep in a ditch, wrapped in your cloak, jumping at every sound. Every snap of a twig could be pursuers. Every distant voice could be guards coming to drag you back. But morning comes and you're still free. You walk to the nearest town, a small market village that doesn't know you, doesn't care where you came from. You buy bread with one of your coins and eat it slowly, savoring every bite like it's your first meal. You're not safe. You might never be safe. The Earl could send men to find you, might consider you a runaway, might want to make an example. Or he might just shrug and hire a new jester, forgetting you ever existed. You don't know which would be worse. For now, you're free. Hungry, scared, unsure, but free. You still flinch at loud noises. You still have the urge to perform when people look at you. You still sometimes wake up reaching for the bells that are no longer there. But slowly, day by day, you start to remember what it feels like to be human. You find work eventually. Not good work, but work. Helping at an inn, washing dishes, hauling water. The pay is terrible, barely enough to eat. But it's yours. No one laughs at you. No one hits you. No one owns you. Months pass, then a year. You never go back to the castle, though you sometimes wonder what happened after you left. Did the Earl rage? Did he shrug? Did he even notice? You'll probably never know. One evening, you're sweeping the inn floor when a travelling performer arrives. He's a jongleur, a musician and storyteller. He performs that night for the inn patrons, and he's good. Really good. The kind of good you could never be, not in the costume, not with the weight of expectation crushing you. After his performance, you approach him. That was impressive. Thank you. He studies you. You have the look of a performer yourself. Used to be. Long time ago. What stopped you? I wasn't free. He nods like he understands. And now, you think about the question. Are you free? Really? You still have nightmares about the Earl. You still flinch when people raise their voices. You still carry the costume in your pack, unable to let it go completely. But you're choosing how to live. That has to count for something. Now I'm trying to be. The jongleur smiles. That's the hardest performance of all. He's right. Being yourself, after years of being a fool, is harder than any routine you ever learned. You're still figuring out who you are beneath the bells and bright colors. It might take the rest of your life, but at least it's your life to figure out. Years later, you'll hear stories about the Earl, how he died in a hunting accident, how his son inherited, how the castle fell to disrepair and was eventually abandoned. You'll feel nothing hearing these stories. No satisfaction, no regret. They're just stories about people you used to know. Sometimes, very rarely, you'll see someone in a jester's costume, a performer at a fair, an entertainer at a wedding, and you'll watch them, seeing yourself in their forced smiles, their calculated movements, their trapped eyes, and you'll whisper a prayer for them, knowing they probably can't hear it, hoping somehow it reaches them anyway. A prayer that they survive, that they escape, that they find whatever freedom looks like for them, because you know now what you didn't know then. Being a jester isn't about making people laugh. It's about surviving despite impossible circumstances. It's about finding tiny moments of humanity in a role designed to strip you of it. It's about enduring when enduring seems impossible. And if you manage to survive, to escape, to become something more than the bells and the costume, maybe others can too. That's the story, the real story, not the romanticized tales of court fools and witty jesters, but the truth about what it meant to be a professional laughingstock in a world that ground people into dust for entertainment. The costume is still in your pack, wrapped carefully, preserved like a relic of a life you survived. You'll never wear it again, but you keep it. Evidence that you existed, that you mattered, even when the world told you didn't. You're not a jester anymore, but you'll never stop being a survivor. If you made it through this whole journey, I hope it opened your eyes to a part of medieval history that's usually glossed over with jokes and caricature. The reality was so much darker, more complex, and more human than the legends suggest. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the brutal truth, hit that like button and subscribe for more history that refuses to look away from the hard truths. Drop your location and the current time in the comments. I love seeing who's exploring history with me, wherever you are in the world. Now rest easy, let your mind settle, and drift away into whatever dreams come next. Until next time, history friends.